Woohoo! Welcome everybody today to this intro talk on biophilic design. And it's something that is really dear to my heart, and you'll learn about it as we go through here. So let's just, And oh, my name is Maureen Calamia, for those of you who don't know me, and I look forward to meeting you. And thank you so much for being live on here today. This is really, really special. So before we start, I would love to, when I'm live with people teaching and doing consultations, I always have a bowl or Tibetan bells that I ring just to kind of calm the energy down and kind of feel into the space that we're in. So if you could just put your left hand on your heart and just sit for a few moments and take a few breaths. Just feel the warmth of your hand on your heart. And feel the breath just really go into a natural rhythm. And let's take one more breath. Okay. Thank you for that. So just to give you a little bit of background on who I am a certified feng shui practitioner since 2005. I started my own school in feng shui. Well, not my own, but I started teaching a certification program that I developed with two of my colleagues in Syosset, New York, back in 2009. Did that for 5 years, and then I felt the need to go off and create my own program and really dive into the 5 elements of Chinese philosophy. And that is something that's really near and dear to my heart. We'll be talking a little bit about that today because I use the 5 elements as a framework for the biophilic design principles. It has great meaning to me, and I feel as feng shui professional or someone who has an interest in feng shui, I think you'll agree, it's really a fabulous system. I have, done lots of workshops. I have some amazing teachers. So even though I've been teaching for 12 years, perhaps it is 11, 12 years, I am constantly learning. I'm a constant student, and I am just totally jazzed about learning something new. So, so perhaps that's you too. I am a author of Creating Luminous Spaces, which was published in 2018 by Red Wheel Wiser Press. And I am doing lots of talks. Well, not right now, although I am doing some Zoom talks, which is really fun. So I do a lot of speaking engagements. And I've been on TV, News 12, if you're local. And actually there's a Newsday segment that I did on feng shui and real estate just right before all this lockdown happened. I also am a very proud member of the International Feng Shui Guild, and I served on the board of directors for 10 years there. It's just an amazing organization, and some of you that are here today belong to it, so welcome. And I have other credentials, of course, and I'm also an author of many online publications and offline publications. And lastly, almost lastly, I should say that I am married to my husband for 35 years this summer, and we have 2 wonderful grown children, and I'm very grateful that they've been able to shelter in place with us. So our whole family is together, and that just I feel a lot of gratitude for that, the way it happened. And I should say, lastly, I am super, super passionate about our connection to the natural world. So that human nature connection is something that really drives me. So in this brief intro, we're going to talk a little bit about what is biophilic design, what does it have to do with feng shui, and kind of why is it important, and a little bit about some of the principles. So biophilic design comes from the root word biophilia, which was coined back in the 1950s by a psychologist named Erich Fromm. And he recognized or acknowledged this idea that we do have a tendency toward living things. We love living things, and we need them in our lives in order to have fulfilling, healthy, mental, emotional, spiritual lives. And biophilic design was developed only in the, I would say, I can't remember the year, but it was in the 1990s, the concept kind of came up, and it was, I'm going to share a little bit with you about one of the founders. And it was about recognizing this need in our indoor spaces, our not just indoor, but the built environment, the man-made environment. And it's about maintaining, enhancing, and restoring the experience of nature, which just makes total sense to so many of us, and I'm sure everybody that's live here. So, biophilic design is, some of you are in the design community and you're familiar with something called LEED, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And it's something that the US Green Building Council developed a few decades ago, probably back in the 90s as well. And what that system, LEED, was developed to focus on being earth-friendly. And that is a really valiant, move. And it was really, really smart. It took a long time to really catch up, but it's really gaining much more ground now. But originally, initially, projects done with LEED, kind of this low impact design, people started recognizing that they felt like soulless. The places felt sterile. They didn't have a warmth to it, and they started recognizing that we need to bring in another element into this, which is more of like a restorative design. It's kind of the human element. So not only do spaces need to be earth-friendly, they need to be human-friendly. And so kind of these two kind of came together in this idea of biophilic design. We're not going to get into in this course that I'm going to do, talking about that low impact so much. That is really for programs like labels like LEED and stuff to go through, like solar panels and all that stuff. I don't get real technical with any of that stuff, but we're going to really focus on that human element and how important that is. So this was an interesting, cheap little graphic I pulled together because I went, okay, how much, I love these Venn diagrams, how much is the overlap between my love, feng shui, and this new passion, biophilic design? And I really kind of thought about it quite a bit. And there's a heavy overlap between these two disciplines. So let me just kind of give you a little overview. So I look at, of course, everything through the lens of some basic concepts of feng shui, because I think they're just spot on. So if we look at feng shui, that goes back thousands of years, 4,000 or 5,000 years. Feng shui was developed in a world that had no technology, or basic technology like the wheel. It was in a time when humanity, needed to be totally in touch with the natural world around them, the rhythms and the patterns of nature in order to survive. everything around ancient man was natural materials, and they were super close to their original strength, shall I say. Those natural materials exude this energy from the earth, and it was used without degrading, I guess I should say, degrading its beautiful intrinsic energy. So, you know, in those times, they really didn't need uh, the things that we need today. So, but I also want to mention that feng shui has, over the thousands of years, has added so much onto it, and it's kind of, in a way, distorted feng shui, but it's all good. I mean, there are aspects of feng shui that are more cultural and more formulaic, that have developed over the years. And, it kind of pulls it away from kind of the core foundation of feng shui, which was all about the land and looking at how the weather patterns worked and how the land form either protected you or made you vulnerable to the elements. And, but so when I talk about this overlap between biophilic design and feng shui, it's really those core attributes of feng shui that I'm talking about. So I kind of look at, and I think you would agree, that feng shui is more the yin, because feng shui is all about the intuitive feeling we get in a space, and a little bit more esoteric. The results of feng shui are more like self-reported, results like, oh, I feel better if my desk faces this direction versus another direction, that type of thing. With biophilic design, it's a more yang approach, or yang, whatever word, however you like to say it. I have to say yang because my daughter's an acupuncturist, and when I started saying yang, she went, oh, it's yang. So the yang approach to feng shui. And this is because in order to adapt this new emerging discipline to current construction and design practices, you have to be much more masculine, because those types of activities are inherently more masculine. Not talking about it's, men, but it's a more masculine, structured approach to design. So, and the fact that you're dealing with a community that thinks along those lines, more linear, it's hard to kind of bring in like, oh, well, this just feels good. You have to have some structure around it. And the structure that biophilic design rests on is tons and tons, thousands of studies that prove that environments that incorporate biophilic design contribute to greater productivity. Of course, we're talking about the workplace, because it all comes down to money. Better, creativity, increased morale, lower turnover, and then, of course, things that are more physical. So lowers the blood pressure, lowers the production of cortisol, improves the production of the feel-good hormones, and so on and so on and so on. So biophilic design is this wonderful, wonderful practice that appeals to today's modern world, and does kind of really enhance and kind of bring forth some of those ideas that we have in feng shui that some people wouldn't necessarily be open to. So that, to me, there's so much there. And there's this Taoist phrase, living in harmony with the earth brings good fortune. And that, to me, says so much. That is like, one of my teachers mentioned it years ago, and I went, oh, that's a keeper. And I use it and use it and use it, because to me, that's basically the essence of feng shui. And it's the essence of biophilic design as well. And, you know, you may recognize this beautiful, amazing structure, Falling Water, that is outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. I haven't been there yet. I would love to hear if anybody here has later, because it is just uh, an amazing structure that talks about really kind of harnessing the beauty of the natural world and you know, connecting it directly to a living space. Now, feng shui wise, this place isn't so great. And I have to even say biophilic design wise, it's not, you know, perfect either. I understand that the stone wasn't quarried locally, that it was brought in. Of course, there's a lot of cement, but you kind of needed that. So, you know, it's not perfect, but no place is perfect. I just think this is just a wonderful space to reflect on when we think about feng shui and biophilic design. So why is biophilic design so important? I gave a little bit about that. So one is our developments, especially in the West. So much of our homes are built, you know, with mass industrialization. So in the last, I don't know, probably since the 1950s, 1960s, there's been such a boom in housing, and you know, they needed to put up many houses at the cheapest price. So we've got all these materials that are just so far removed from the natural world and from the natural elements that they are part of. So one thing I have to remind myself is everything surrounding us is made from nature. It's just how far removed is it and how processed is it, just like our food, right? So thinking about that plastic, you know, case over there, yeah, it has to be made from nature because we don't have anything else on this planet except from nature, but it is so far removed that the energy is just flat or at worst negative to us. So this mass industrialization brings us around to technology too. So we're surrounded by the technology, and thank God for the technology, or we wouldn't be here today. The psychological impact of this kind of separation. So it's like nature's out there, you know, we're in here, the walls separate us, and those of us on this call, we get that. We get that we need to connect more with that. But our prospective clients and, you know, circle of people, they don't quite get that yet. But we're going deep into that. We are inside now. No time more than ever are we inside. I created this months ago. And, you know, the studies show that the average US person is indoors 90% or greater of their day, indoors in some building. And the only time pretty much they're outside is between, you know, their door and their car, or their, you know, or mass transit kind of thing. And this is having a tremendous impact on everything, because everything is connected. We are disconnected from nature. You know, it requires a mindfulness, a mindful consciousness to connect to nature in our everyday lives, because everything is so sped up. And I'm talking before this lockdown. Our lives are so sped up and jam-packed with so many things that all we can think about is, how am I going to accomplish that next thing on my to-do list? And if we're walking from here to our car, that's what's going through our mind. It's not that gorgeous blossom sitting there waiting to be smelled. And, you know, even I, and you probably have had this too, you have to go, oh, wait a minute, let me step back. Let me smell that. There was this quote that somebody posted somewhere that said, if you walk past a field of purple flowers and you don't acknowledge it, God is going to be pissed off. And I thought, yeah, that's it. If you don't stop and notice that gorgeous rose, the colors, the smell, the feel of it, you know, you're missing out on life. So even people that are more conscious than others miss that opportunity or almost miss that opportunity. So the masses are clearly missing it. So one thing that feng shui looks at, biophilic design looks at, is activating and engaging our senses. That's really what it's about. And it is so connected to that mindfulness and that being conscious and conscious living. So here we have a gentleman sitting under a tree, and notice all that like sun dappled ground around him. So he's enjoying the shade, but there's sun, and it's just this beautiful environment. And that is something that we do gravitate toward. And here on the left is some, I don't know, I found this online, but I would imagine it's probably a hotel or some other kind of hospitality type of space. And they've kind of incorporated that idea of this sun dappled, you know, where the sun is filtering through leaves. It's filtering through the different patterns in the skylight. So I thought that was a really great kind of example of how we can incorporate biophilic design in the space. The human mind and body evolved in a sensorially rich environment, one that continues to be critical to people's health, productivity, emotional, intellectual, and even spiritual well-being. So here's one of the fathers of biophilic design, and his name is Stephen Kellert. He passed a few years ago, and he wrote this book, Biophilic Design. Some of you may have this book or have wanted to purchase it. It's a textbook. It's $80 US. It's substantial, and I got it probably back in 2009 and started reading it. And it's just essays from people that are from you know, architects and designers to landscape developers to contractors to developers to psychologists. I mean, it's just full of talking about this subject from all different vantage points, and it's just fascinating. And as I was reading this book, I reached out to Professor Kellett, and he's in Yale. He was in Yale, so, you know, it's just a ferry ride for me. And I happened to have another appointment up in Connecticut, so I reached out to him and asked him to meet. And I'm just so grateful that I had time to just sit with him in his office and talk about feng shui and, you know, where I saw biophilic design fitting in. And he totally agreed. He said, it is a modern expression of feng shui. He totally acknowledged it. But he also admitted that he really didn't know a lot about feng shui. And of course, a lot of what people know about feng shui is that it's kind of folkloric and it has these kind of funky cultural things involved. But underneath it all, you know, some people really get that it is all about the natural world and our you know, connection to it. So I mentioned that I was writing this book, and he was, you know, he was like, that's great, you know, and I said, I would love for you to, you know, kind of see it before I publish it. And he said, yes. Unfortunately, it took me 10 years to write the book um, because I was working on the outline for 10 years. And once I got the outline right, it just flowed and I was able to get it written in a matter of 5 months. So anyhow, this book, Creating Luminous Spaces, is not specifically about biophilic design, but I do incorporate it into it because the book is about the 5 elements. And to me, the 5 elements are a great segue or a great thread that connects our souls with the natural world. So the 5 elements, I'm sure you all somewhat familiar with them. You know, I talk about this course being for feng shui practitioners, but you do not need to know feng shui. You could just be an enthusiast. You know, it's really just about the 5 elements. And we don't really get into feng shui at all in the course. But I developed my own principles based on categorizing them because I have one of these brains where I see everything through the lens of yin and yang and the 5 elements. And when I started sitting there looking at the attributes of biophilic design, I went, wow, oh my gosh, you know, this goes here and this goes here. And the next thing you know, I've got this whole system. So there's 3 very top line kind of categories when we look at biophilic design principles. So very simply, it's the nature in the space. So we're talking about the plants, the water element here. That's the wood floor. If there's stone around, you know, it's that type of level. It's bringing nature into the space through using the elements. Then we've got symbols of nature. And that would be more of artwork, of course. I'm trying to think of the words. You know, borders, carved leaves that are I'm at a loss for the words to use, but I think you get it. What I'm trying to say, there's columns and there's carved leaves in it. You know, it's just bringing the symbols of nature indoors. And let's just see here. Motifs. Thank you. Thank you, Janine. And yeah, it's just kind of bringing that into our spaces. I always, I look at, you know, some amazing structures such as, yep, shapes, Susan, yep. Shapes and patterns, right? So Grand Central Station in New York City, for those of you who've been there, and I'm sure you have some kind of major public building in your neck of the woods that just exudes nature. And I forget the name of the design, but I'm sure somebody will. Is it Beaux Art or some other name of the type of design? But it just really brings in the carved patterns of leaves and flowers all over the place. And the ceiling has the constellations on it. So like that's all about that nature symbols. And then lastly, nature of the space. And that is more about like the proportions of a space and how that relates to the natural world. So, you know, this one is more along the lines of what an architect would do, because somebody of my level wouldn't be doing so much of that. But it's about, you know, like this vaulted space and having that skylight with the natural light coming through. It gives that connection. Really kind of beautiful here. I didn't even realize it, but as I'm looking at it, we've got this beautiful water feature in that square on the bottom of this picture, and the square represents Earth. And then you've got that connection to the skylight, which is somewhat circular, above, which represents heaven. Didn't even think about it until now, but there you go, that connection of heaven and earth, which is course, a concept in feng shui. So, so that nature of the space is, you know, more of a structural uh, for design. So we have the 5 elements here, and I call this my Luminous Spaces Biophilic Design Principles. And in order to, oh, thank you. Yes, Julie, Natural Light, and Morgan, Art Nouveau. Yes, thank you. Couldn't think of it. Okay, so there's this overarching principle, as I mentioned before, about activating the 5 senses. That is the role of biophilic design, is to activate our senses. And when we do that, we're actually living more present and more mindfully. Just think about that. You know, we're told that when we're worrying or we're anxious or fearful, we're kind of up here, we're living out there. We're not in our bodies. And, you know, the big meditation gurus out there will say, you know, the easiest way to become more mindful and present is to feel your body right now and all of those senses. And when you do that, you can't be worrying and fearful and anxious and blah, blah, blah. You are in your body. So biophilic design makes us become more present and mindful in the moment. So then we have, of course, natural materials, colors, and patterns for all of the 5 elements. That, again, is across the board. But we're going to go into each one of these elements a little bit deeper, not too much, but just a little bit to chat about how I view this. And what I do want to say is I've taken a little bit of creative license in attributing these principles to the 5 elements. So, you know, yeah, some of them you might go, well, that might be more fire than metal or this or that. Yeah, but I kind of developed this as, you know, I kind of had my own thoughts and intuition about where these different placements would go. So we've got movement and vitality, which is the overarching principle of the wood element. So we've got this like amazing garden with, of course, you know, with plants, which is the wood element, and it's just absolutely alive. And then we've got, you know, potted plants that we bring into our homes. That's all part of it. And then something like this green living wall, which is pretty awesome. And not cheap either, but I do have some resources for these different products, and just really cool. And you can even see in the carpet there, there's some really amazing carpet manufacturers that are, you know, taking this biophilic design concept and just creating some really fun carpets or rugs that that mimic nature. So fire is illumination and connection. You know, obviously lighting is perfect. And I love this, just an example, because although it's kind of watery in the flow, it's pointed, which is another symbol for fire. Animals, birds, pets, they're all considered the fire element. And then we've got, you know, this playfulness and bright colors, and of course, reds, those are all fire. Just look at that lamp there. How playful is that? So the middle way is what I call the earth element. And one of the major principles of earth is that yin and yang. It's that balance between, you know, complementary opposites. So notice there's quite a bit of that in this photograph. You've got kind of like the hard angular shapes of the flooring and the windows, but then you've got that softness of those lamps, and the upholstered furniture, to me, just creates a wonderful balance. And then of course you have stone, which is earth. And hey, if it's locally quarried stone, you even get an extra bonus point there because it exudes a sense of place where you are, which to me is just, oh, love, love, love that concept, a sense of place. And here you're getting a sense of place, and this is the Vancouver Airport and the International Terminal, which is, oh, I forget the name of it. This is an exhibit, but it's about the Pacific Trail, I think. And of course, there's a lot of First Nation reference in their exhibits throughout this airport. So what I love to say is, few decades ago, you'd walk into any airport and you wouldn't know where the heck you were if you didn't see a sign. And now it's almost like there's no airports like that, which is really cool. And, airports have really, really dove into this kind of sense of place. So you get a feel for, you're in New York City, you're going to see, yellow cabs, and you're going to see all sorts of stuff, but, that's just, bold and brash New York City. And you go anywhere and you will have a feel and a sense for where you were located. Shiny and clear is what I call metal. And metal is about organization in feng shui, and it's about beauty and structure. So just kind of looking at the way everything is organized and just the beauty that's coming out of that, the still lifes in that bookcase, just really wonderful. It's also about the wind and breezes. So designing to kind of feel and also see wind is really fabulous. So having that curtain move with the breeze when the windows open is just like a lovely integration with the natural world. And then you have things like sacred geometry, just really cool. And then lastly, we have wabi sabi and flow. I didn't do this purposely, but you just see how long it took for that, that slide to come through. Water is the most yin of all the elements, and it takes its time. So funny. Things like curves in our indoor spaces are connected with the water element. Okay, that one came in. Of course, water fountains. Now this picture is just, it's so fun. And it kind of gets to the mystery of what's along this path. It invites you to go up there to see. And that's one of the concepts that are in wabi sabi and flow, the mystery of a space. Whoops. And take a look at this. Oh my gosh. Talk about risk and peril, which is one of the concepts of biophilic design. And you've got, if you can't really see it very well, the floor here is glass. And there's rock underneath there, and I believe it is a place, I'm not sure if there's water there now, could be, but definitely there is water there, and that it is meant to kind of show off the water below your feet. And that feels a little risky and perilous to step on that. But yet it's kind of lighthearted, and it's also very sinewy, that follows the path of water. So that's a really interesting concept that biophilic design has as one of the attributes. So this quote is, fabulous. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. So I feel like now, more than ever, we have this pause to really look at our lives in a different way. I think you'd all agree. And I'm very hopeful that, concepts like this and feng shui and mindfulness, and of course, it's all tied to environmentalism, will start really taking root in more expanded ways. So that is the overview of biophilic design, and I just want to share with you what's coming up in this course. It's a live class that starts next week. It is going to be 6 modules. There's an intro module, and then each of the other modules focus on an element, and we deep dive into that element. There's also a layer of different industries or different sectors. So we've got residential, hospitality, healthcare, civic spaces, workspaces that we go through in each of those modules. It's a live Zoom class 2 times a week. I'm just doing it during the month of May, and replays, of course, are available. The course material has my own written content as well as white papers and videos and online resources. There's charts, templates, and forms for those of you who like to have that kind of structure, and it's community support. We have a private Facebook group as well. And there's assignments and quizzes. Nothing too major that you can't get through in the time period. And there's breakout sessions, which depending on the number of students, I'll see how many will go into each breakout. But I really love this idea because you can then kind of not only develop relationships with your fellow students, but also kind of, chew through some ideas and get, different perspectives and share. So I really like that idea that I'm introducing this time. So the opportunity is to help contribute to health and well-being, enhance productivity in work situations, also increase creativity, counterbalances technology. And that is something that I just touched on before, but we're a culture that is our society is so rooted in technology. Richard Louv, who's another amazing author that I so connect with, he says, we need nature to counterbalance. Not that we're going to throw out technology, we need it, but we need that counterbalance. It deepens the human nature connection, and to me, it's the way of the future. So my course, it can add a new dimension to what you're doing, helping your clients in a different way, also learning a new language. Some people don't resonate with the language of feng shui. So if we use the language of biophilic design, it is definitely more acceptable because there's research that backs it up. And you can become the expert. It's amazing. I have to say that biophilic design has grown so much, but we're still like that. I started reading about it in 2008. Probably in 2010, I put a Google alert for biophilic design. I would get 1 email a week, maybe, maybe 2. I now get multiple emails a day with sometimes, 5 or 6 articles. So that to me shows the growth. Whereas just a few years ago, so many architects and designers I talked about, they were like, what? What the heck is that? Now people know what it is, but they really don't know it. So you could be that one in the room that knows it. And you could be ahead of the curve, because I really, really do believe this is the way of the future. So the schedule is to enroll by this Sunday, the 3rd. Orientation materials and Module 1 go out May 4th, which is Monday. Classes are held from May 7th to the 26th. And it's Mondays and Thursdays, except the 26th is a Tuesday because the 25th is Memorial Day, which is a US holiday. So I skipped Memorial Day. Classes are at 12 o'clock Eastern time. One of my friends took that of a beautiful restaurant. One of the things that, I already got somebody to reach out from Australia this morning that, am I going to accommodate like that part of the world. And also, if there are people that can't make 12 o'clock, there's the possibility of doing evening classes in addition at 7:30, but I would need to have at least 4 students that would want to do that. And I definitely, and if I would need 4 students to make that also a second time to do the class. But if that doesn't work out and say there's only like 2, of course you could watch all the replays and participate live on the Facebook group. That's always an option. And I would just want anybody who wants that, evening option to email me by Friday. So, so please just let me know, and then I can kind of keep a list and figure out if that makes sense. So there are discounts. If you're an IFSG member, it's 10% off. Students that were part of my MID program in Syosset, they get $200 off. And my current or former Luminous Spaces Feng Shui students get $300 off. And like I said, Monday materials will be emailed to everybody. Class, okay, and class starts next Thursday. So I'm gonna open it up and would love to hear any questions you guys have. Let me just see, where can I unmute all? If you muted yourself, you can, some of you have muted yourself, so if you want to chat, please, I'll stop the share. So does anyone have any questions on biophilic design, things that I covered, or the course itself?
Is there a certificate or something that you achieve after the course? I have no background in feng shui. I have my master's in interior architecture. So I've always really wanted to go in this direction. So I just didn't know if it's,
Yes,
if there is a specific like certification or something that we do. Yes,
there is a certification. So yes, you would obviously need to participate, do the assignments, and be as present as possible on the calls. I mean, it is only 6 calls. If you have to, miss one, that's not a big problem. And then I have quizzes, and the quizzes for each module are 10 questions, pretty much true or false, multiple choice. It's more about when you take the quiz, it's reminding you of some of the key pieces of information. You have to get an 80% on each quiz, but you can retake it. Because it's not about failing the quiz, it's about remembering the content.
Right.
Really, the only other thing that I ask people is I just like them to write a few paragraphs about their experience in the course and how they see themselves using it.
Yeah, that's great.
And you get certified. And I have, I don't know, about 8 or 9 students in the fall when I taught it for the very first time that got certified.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think one person, and they're working on it still.
That's great.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Are the assessments through the quizzes, or is there more work to be done to be assessed?
Oh yeah, the quizzes are the assessment. So it's all online, and you just kind of go through the 10 questions, and you find out right away how many you got correct. And this way you could go back in, research and see. Actually, the way we set it up is the answer pops up, the right answer pops up if you didn't put it in correctly. So you're going to learn as you go through the assessment.
Okay.
Or the quiz, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to have us do projects for each class like you did in the fall?
Good question. So Lori was in it in the fall. We're going to have, well, it's different now, right? Because we can't get out and take our own photos, but just online, just to post each module asks you to go online and look for some photos, or maybe even photos that you have, and post them up, and for discussion. Yes.
Does it relate mainly to sort of interior design, I'm presuming?
Does it relate more to, well, tell you the truth, okay, it is, I'm not an interior designer, so just want to say that I'm a feng shui practitioner, so it doesn't get too heavy in the design aspect, but the ways, okay, so what I've done was I have assimilated the ways to incorporate these concepts into a kind of like a doable approach rather than a complete renovation on a space. So as a feng shui practitioner, I'll go in and I will give recommendations to people, and it will be things like, color of the walls, artwork, moving objects around, things like that. So it's kind of like a very low level of investment. And some things aren't even an investment, it's just moving furniture. So I have taken these concepts and I have assimilated them into very doable ways of modifying spaces.
Like relatable.
Average homeowner, or average residential client, but then you could also use them for a corporate client. And you could go to the, like, okay, let's renovate this space by bringing skylights in, if that's what their budget allows. So you can do it at all levels.
Yeah. Sort of, you can really relate it to your sort of practice of, yeah.
I try to make
how I see it.
I'm sorry?
I don't mean to interrupt you all, but just if you are already an interior designer, and how it was explained to me when I was researching this through my old professor, is that if you are already a designer, this is another skill set to bring into your practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another tool. Yeah.
This is like a new way of looking at things, a really beautiful way of looking at things, honestly. And so I'm an interior designer, but that's how I function. But I want this tool to, make my practice more meaningful to my clients.
Yeah. I think I understand. That's what I kind of thought it was. I was just making sure it sort of relates to what I do. So yeah.
And do you work with fabric?
Yeah, surface pattern design for interiors. So it's more the surface decoration, which I wanted to sort of bring the biophilic theories into. So it's got a bit more of a authentic reasoning to exist sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lori?
Yeah, I just want to add to those of us who were in the class in the fall, it was really fun and interesting and informative how diverse our group was. There were a lot of interior designers, but like I'm a landscape designer, and some people, had other kinds of jobs, and it added to the conversation that we all learned a little bit about, those fields and how Maureen tied it together. It was really good. I was glad that we had not just people in the class.
Yeah, it was really awesome to get different perspectives. Yeah. Thank you, Lori.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Within the class, do you teach or provide ideas or models how to monetize this as a business? And if so, who are the, best customers? Who's buying the services?
Very good question. We really don't get into the business aspect of it. However, we learn a language that kind of broadens the base. Are you, I know you went on mute, and I'm not sure what your first name is. It says T-Cat. I'm sorry.
Yes, that is part of nature. I love cats. My name is Ty.
Hi, Ty. Well, I'm
Hi.
not sure. Do you do feng shui or interior design?
No, I don't, but I am in the area of energy, metaphysical, you know, those areas. I am well, if it's working, my degree right now is in microbiology. How about that? Viruses,
Wow.
pathogens, all that stuff. But, you know, I'm just a person of nature and I respect every part of nature. So I'm looking to really parlay my skill. And I've also been in environmental health. So I've also been doing some property management and maintenance work and being certified in that area. So that's why I'm looking, you know, as an environmental health person to kind of incorporate something like biophilia and just trying to figure out where to go. I don't know how to go and where to go. So,
well, I tell you, I mean, environmental health, like, whoa, I mean, you know, one place that really needs this type of work is facilities at every level, you know, dealing with the dentist to the oncologist, you know, in their waiting rooms, in their, you know, workrooms. You know, I've talked to people before about classrooms. That's another area that, oh my gosh, you know, this work can really, really help. And then, of course, you just got your regular office spaces that really benefit. I mean, I had a client this past fall with it was a warehouse that was, you know, it was one of those metal warehouse structures that had offices in them, plus like maintenance facilities and stuff. And it's a trucking company. But there's no natural light. So, you know, it's just amazing. And when you get like statistics that you can quote and the language of this, it really hits home with people that, oh my gosh, if I can just minimize absenteeism by just a little bit, it can be a huge impact on my bottom line. You'll get that kind of information to help you. Oh, good to see you. You'll learn that kind of information. Now, who is your target? You know, it's that it tends to be people that are a little bit more open-minded. But if they have partners or, you know, bosses or other people that have to play a role in doing this, then you have that more solid language than we have in feng shui to give them a solid business case to do this work.
okay, and just really quickly to piggyback off of that, I've also been kind of moving into the area as well with aging in place. So have you found that to also be helpful in that arena? I'm sure you know what aging in place is.
Absolutely. So Julie left. She's an interior designer that does aging in place. That's a great opportunity. Somebody has a background noise. I don't know if you would mind muting. We can hear talking in the background. Thanks. Okay, so aging in place is where people get to live in their home without having to go to a nursing home, and they're able to, live at home. This is just a great opportunity then to kind of bring nature to them, because, you know, very often they can't get out into nature too well. So yeah, that's a really wonderful addition to that. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, sorry.
That's okay. Any other questions?
It sounds so fascinating. Am I going to be at a, I guess, is it important for me also to, it seems like they work hand in hand a little bit, but you did say that biophilic design is separate from feng shui, right?
Right. You do not have to know feng shui to do this work.
But you go on the same 5 principles that you use with, okay. Well, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. That is like a, kind of my gateway into biophilic design is through the 5 elements.
That's awesome.
You know, I do teach all the different, because there's a list of principles from multiple organizations that have developed principles over the course of these last 2 decades. So I just kind of like looked at all of them and saw how they've changed, and kind of like the most popular version of the principles got rid of some of the things that are more warm and fuzzy, like affection and playfulness and spirit of place,
Right.
sense of place. And I went, no, those are absolutely key. So, you know, like I've kind of gone through and pulled out those aspects that I felt I could deliver on as a practitioner at my level, and not being someone who's designing a building. Also gets to the whole human being.
Yes.
And it in a more spiritual way.
Yeah, couldn't be a more perfect time for that.
Yeah, I have to say that I've looked for courses in biophilic sort of design, and there aren't any. I mean, I've looked through the UK and there's nothing. So it is quite a new thing, sort of, to be learning, I feel. Do you know of many other sort of learning providers that give this sort of information?
There is one, totally honest. I created my course late last summer, and launched it in October. And just as I was promoting my course, the International Living Future Institute came out with a course. I don't want to hide this from you, because I want you to know. But they are based in Seattle, and they came out with a program, and I took it because it was, I've been searching for a decade for a course. And, you know, of course, when I come out with mine, they come out with theirs. So I went, okay, I'll take it. And I did think it was very good, and I learned a lot, but I came at the program with a whole lot. So I was able to incorporate some of the resources that they provided in it, which are just new, new material, and I've incorporated that into my course. So, but that is another program.
Yeah.
But there, to my knowledge, there isn't anything else.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've looked, and there's things that sort of more to do with architecture, and it's sort of a bit more harder. I'm just looking for something, the feeling and the flow of it all, sort of thing.
Right.
The understanding.
And that course does, it really is more for the architectural design community, and not for someone like me, although, I've benefited from it. This is a little bit more of a dealing with people more like residential.
Yeah.
Smaller budgets in workspaces.
Yeah, sort of bringing it more to the normal person rather than the the architect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The types of businesses that have incorporated biophilic design, you guys are probably aware: Google, Etsy, Amazon, all the big tech companies have developed headquarters using these principles. But they've got billions of dollar budgets and huge teams and stuff like that. And they've got so those are like the top companies in the world. And then you've got everybody else.
Yeah.
Friend that has an accounting office. Someone else has a real estate office. And these people are working in environments that are soul draining. And there's just so much opportunity. That's where I see us come in.
Yeah, sounds perfect.
It's great.
That's a question to ask. So when you actually are I guess, providing these services to your clients, do you find that you might have to incorporate helping them to declutter, or that would be something that you would outsource to someone else? Because if you're moving around different items and making new spaces, are you doing that? Are you offering that services, or you provide maybe that suggestion that they may need that?
That's a good question, because in feng shui, that is like number one. If there's clutter, you really can't do anything for feng shui. You need to get rid of that first. And if it's just little minor clutter, you know, that is easy. You know, you just have to, as a feng shui practitioner or a biophilic design practitioner, I would say, this is representing X, you know, giving them the motivation. In feng shui, we have a tool called the feng shui bagua map. So I would look and I would say, oh, you've got this pile of clutter in your romance corner, you know, and you just told me you're looking to attract a healthy romance. Maybe, you know, so it gives them the motivation and an inspiration to get rid of that clutter. But I never do decluttering. I recommend, as you said, a professional organizer, and I've got a number of them that I work with that I just, you know, give the client a contact. But I have to say, like, we talk about energy a lot in feng shui, and who you attract as a client, there's always something to learn from that experience. And I very rarely get clients with a lot of clutter. It's super rare. But if I do, I refer them.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be sending out an email with the link for anybody who came in late. And for those of you who are watching the recordings, thank you so much for showing up here too. And look forward to connecting with any of you who are interested in chatting more.
Okay then, thank you. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, Janine, so good to see you.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to type thanks, but I'll just say thanks. Okay, see you next week.
Yes, great.
Okay,
Take care.
great. Keep
Bye-bye.
well. Bye.
Bye.